The first kick wasn't just meant for her, it was meant to remind everyone watching that money could silence mercy. On the white sand patio of an oceanfront estate, crystal glasses lay shattered, and a young waitress knelt in the sand, her thin arms wrapped tightly around a trembling puppy. Around her stood a crowd dressed in silk, linen, and diamonds, people who had never known hunger, never feared eviction, never had to choose between rent and groceries. And yet in that moment, it was the smallest, weakest creature there who showed the greatest courage. Before we go any further, if you believe kindness still matters in this world, if you believe people deserve second chances no matter their circumstances, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us who we truly are. Her name was Elena Morales. 24 years old. Waitress by day, caretaker by night. She had been working double shifts for months at a luxury beach resort, saving every tip in a chipped ceramic jar back in her small apartment. The puppy in her arms, a black and tan shepherd mix she had named Rico, was the only family she had left. She had found him weeks earlier in an alley behind the restaurant, ribs visible, whimpering beside a dumpster. She understood abandonment. She understood hunger. So she took him home. The wealthy party that afternoon was supposed to be simple: serve drinks, clear plates, stay invisible. Elena had learned long ago that invisibility was often survival in places like this. But Rico had slipped out of her apartment that morning, followed her scent all the way down the boardwalk, and somehow made his way onto the private beach where the event was taking place. At first, no one noticed him. He wandered curiously between lounge chairs and polished shoes, tail wagging timidly. But when he brushed against the pant leg of a sharply dressed guest, everything shifted. Disgust spread across manicured faces. Someone shouted about cleanliness. Another about liability. A man with a watch worth more than Elena's yearly salary stormed forward, fury flashing in his eyes. Elena saw what was happening and ran. She dropped the tray she was carrying. Glasses exploding against the stone, and threw herself over Rico just as the man lashed out. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, but she tightened her grip around the puppy, shielding him with her body. Sand sprayed into the air. Gasps rippled through the guests, but no one stepped forward. They watched as if it were theater. The man's polished shoe struck her side again, not brutally enough to injure gravely, but hard enough to humiliate, to degrade. He barked about animals not belonging in refined spaces. About people not knowing their place. Elena tasted salt and sand and something deeper, the old familiar sting of being less than. Rico whimpered beneath her, trying to lick her face, unaware that she was absorbing the storm for him. What the crowd didn't know was that someone else had seen it all. At the edge of the property, just beyond the dune fence, a tall man in a faded navy t-shirt had been jogging along the shoreline. His name was Daniel Hayes. Most people saw a quiet, broad-shouldered man in his late 30s with short-cropped hair and steady eyes. What they didn't see were the years he had served as a Navy SEAL, the missions that had carved discipline into his bones, the oath that had never quite left his heart: protect those who cannot protect themselves. Daniel had come home from service carrying invisible scars. Loud noises still tightened his chest. Crowds made him uneasy. He found peace in routine runs along the beach, in the rhythm of waves that asked nothing of him. But when he heard the crash of glass and saw the chaos unfolding, something inside him snapped back into focus. He didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the low fence with effortless strength and crossed the sand in seconds. The wealthy guests barely registered him until he was already there, placing himself between Elena and the man who had raised his foot again. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes calm but unyielding. The kind of presence that made even arrogance take a step back. The aggressor tried to bluster, to reclaim control with threats about lawyers and status. But Daniel's steady gaze dismantled the performance. Without laying a hand on anyone, he made it clear the spectacle was over. Elena looked up, dazed, still clutching Rico. For the first time since she had thrown herself onto the sand, she felt safe. Security staff, suddenly brave now that the tide had turned, rushed forward to de-escalate. Murmurs spread through the party. Phones that had been discreetly recording were lowered. The illusion of glamour had cracked. Daniel knelt carefully beside Elena. He didn't touch her without permission. He simply asked if she was hurt, His voice carried none of the condescension she had grown used to, only concern. The manager of the resort arrived next, face pale. Instead of defending his employee, he began apologizing to the guests for the disturbance. Elena felt the familiar dread of losing her job rise in her throat. Daniel heard it too. He straightened slowly and asked one simple question loud enough for everyone to hear: was the resort truly willing to punish a waitress for protecting a defenseless animal from abuse? Silence fell heavier than the ocean air. In that silence, something shifted. A woman in a red dress stepped forward, her earlier indifference replaced with shame. She admitted she had seen everything and confirmed Elena had done nothing wrong. Another guest nodded reluctantly. The crowd's mood began to tilt. Wealth can command attention, but courage commands respect. By evening, the story had spread far beyond the beach. A short clip of Daniel stepping in, calm, firm, unwavering, circulated online. Viewers saw the contrast: extravagance versus empathy, cruelty versus quiet strength. Comments flooded in supporting the young waitress and condemning the behavior of those who believed money excused everything. The resort, eager to repair its image, issued a statement praising Elena's bravery and compassion. They offered to cover veterinary expenses for Rico and promised revised policies protecting staff from harassment. But the real change happened in smaller, quieter ways. Daniel checked in on Elena the next day. Not as a hero expecting gratitude, but as a neighbor making sure someone was okay. He learned about her long shifts, her dream of becoming a veterinary technician, her fear of never escaping the cycle of scraping by. He saw in her the same resilience he had seen in teammates years ago, the kind built not from comfort, but from survival. A local animal clinic, moved by the story, offered Elena a paid internship. Donations arrived from strangers who believed in what she had done. The jar in her apartment filled faster than she ever imagined. Rico recovered quickly from the fright, his tail wagging with renewed enthusiasm each time Daniel visited. The puppy who had once been abandoned now had a future wrapped in possibility. And Daniel. For the first time since returning home from service, he felt the quiet purpose he had been missing. Protecting didn't always mean overseas missions or high-stakes operations. Sometimes it meant standing up on a beach and reminding the world that dignity belongs to everyone. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. If this moment of courage and compassion means something to you, comment the words "kindness wins" below. Let's fill this space with reminders that humanity is still alive. Because here's the truth: the wealthy crowd thought power came from status, from tailored suits and private estates. But power revealed itself differently that day. It showed up in a waitress who refused to let fear override love. It showed up in a veteran who refused to walk past injustice. It showed up in ordinary people online who chose empathy over apathy. Elena still works hard. She still faces challenges. Life doesn't transform into perfection overnight. But she walks a little taller now. She knows that when she shielded that puppy, she wasn't just protecting Rico, she was protecting her own heart from becoming hardened by the world. And Daniel continues his morning runs, the ocean stretching wide beside him. Sometimes Rico runs too, ears flapping in the wind, a living reminder that even the smallest life can change the course of a day. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to stand up for someone who can't stand up for themselves, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps stories like this reach more people who need hope. Because in a world where cruelty can be loud, kindness must be louder.